Professor, I'm thinking about using AI to build 1,000,000 little mini-me robots, and we will rule the world!
Is it that far from reality? Chances are we're getting closer than you think. In this lesson, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI. Where it is right now, where it's been, what kind of jump-started AI, where it's going, what it can do for good, and possibly the threats of AI too. A great little introduction on artificial intelligence, and we'll even do a little bit of coding, do some primitive kind of AI, kind of like a mini algorithm to kind of introduce students to what AI is all about. So join me in this crazy expedition and a journey into AI.
I sense a disturbance in the Force. Apparently, a long time from now in the future, I have just got a message from planet Earth that many children are beginning to learn about AI. But the people who are teaching it aren't doing a very good job, because their faces have been in the screen for far too long, and they forget how to communicate. It's a good thing that in the future, robots will take care of this problem and do all the computing and communicating for you. Anyway, what this video will do is attempt to explain AI. We will have to dumb it down a little bit. Maybe not dumb it down, but oversimplify it, as you were, so that everybody can understand the importance and implications, I have to throw that breath in there, of AI. Look.
There's a lot of really smart people involved in AI doing a lot of really cool things. The problem is they have a hard time communicating and teaching it to people like us who aren't these genius MIT, like brainiac scientists. So that's what this video is going to do. We're going to take it down a step. We're going to bring it down to the level and explain what's up with AI. My name is Chuck Fresh. I'm a teacher. Let's chat about AI and see what's up. Are you guys ready? So AI, what is it? Basically, it's artificial intelligence. That's the actual definition of the acronym AI. So what does it do? Let's talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about, with probably the more important thing, is why everyone's taking it so seriously all of a sudden. I mean, AI has really been around for years, but just recently people have decided, I think we might want to take this a little more seriously. So, back in the day, 2016, so long ago, there was this game called Go. It's been around in China and Asia for over 3,000 years. It's big in Korea, Japan, China. And winning this board game is not easy. It requires some strategic thinking, which is why they teach it to children over there, which amazes me that we don't teach it to children in America. Hint, I'm teaching it to my kids, that's for sure. So what is Go? It's got this, you've got these stones, these white and black stones. I think there's 180 per person. So it's a lot of stones, right? Believe me, it takes a lot of stones to play Go. So what you got to do is kind of surround your enemy and capture their stones. And it's, without going into it, there's a whole bunch of videos on how to play this, and you should look at those for sure. I mean, it's a pretty intense game. So once all the possible moves have been made, they count all the stones on the board, and the empty points are talent, and the person with the highest number wins, right? Pretty straightforward. So the rules are pretty simple, but the gameplay is pretty complex. Why? Because look at this board. There's like they said there's more than 1 trillion. I can't even count that. I can't even count to 1,000 sometimes. There's more than 1 trillion potential board combinations or configurations. So it's pretty intense. I mean, you can start playing and it's really easy to play again, but you never know it's really impossible to do the same game exactly twice unless you did it on purpose, and that would be kind of weird because then you wouldn't win because the other person's going to know what you're going to do. You know what I mean? So in March 2016, this is what happened. The geniuses at Google got together and said, you know what? We've been working on this algorithm. We played chess. We've done all these other things. But what we've never done is been able to beat a world championship Go player. So there's this guy named Lee Sedol. He's won like 18 world championships. And they put him up against this Google AI, the AlphaGo. And for the first time in history, AlphaGo beat a human player at the game Go. 4 games to 1 in the series. 200 million people watched that. We've never heard about that here in America, have we? You didn't hear about it. I didn't hear about it either. But it shocked the world on that March day in 2016 because that was the point where everybody got together, all the businesses in the world, all the important people who make all the decisions about how we live and what we do. They said, you know what? AI is the next big thing. Team, get on it. And then the world started cracking and getting crazy and really digging into this AI. And this is really what changed everything and made AI such an important task, an important goal for just about every company that does anything in technology. It really became the new industrial race. And they're well at it now, 4 years, 5 years into it, and things are happening. So artificial intelligence. So what is artificial intelligence? Basically, intelligence is the capability to reason, to make decisions. Depends how you define intelligence. You can define it pretty loosely, but they say that AI systems will do things like plan, learn, reason, solve problems, really develop perception, which we've already done, like self-driving cars, being able to see, and Siri and Alexa being able to hear us, and eventually be able to do motion and manipulate things the way that we can, to be able to grab something and not squeeze it and crush it, to have those senses that are intelligent enough to do the right thing so we don't damage the world around us. So basically, that's what artificial intelligence is. And also, they're putting in some social intelligence, and we'll talk about that later because that's where things get really weird. Artificial intelligence can be split into 2 broad types. Some call it narrow AI, and then there's general AI. So what are these 2 types? Narrow AI is kind of what we see today, like things that learn specific tasks, like Siri can do things, answer certain questions, and like Alexa does things. She does what we tell her to do based on programming, on coding that coders have already put into it. So they pretty much do one thing and they do it really well, and then they learn how to do it better over time through various mechanisms. So even self-driving cars, search engines, all that kind of stuff is an example of narrow AI, which we all pretty much use in our everyday lives today. So general AI is where it gets really interesting. This is the type of adaptable intellect that we have. We can change our minds. And that is when we know we've hit general AI, when a computer can reverse its strategy and do something totally different because of what it's experienced or learned in the past. Capable of learning how to carry out more complex tasks, from cooking to writing music, or to reason based on its previous experience. Now, it's thought it's going to be 15, 20 years before we really see any in-home rollout of this type of AI. Everything kind of starts in the laboratory, and then it kind of migrates to big business and the military, and then it ends up in our homes. That's kind of how technology rolls downhill in our world. It could change, but expect 15, 20 years before you begin to see any real kind of rollout of general AI in our household. So it'll be a little bit of a while yet. But that presents a great opportunity because as a kid, if you're watching this as a child, it presents an opportunity for you to have a lucrative career in this because you're right at the forefront. And now is the time to get into this. So machine learning. What is machine learning? It's really where a computer system just takes large amounts of junk. Some people call it junk, some people call it data. And it just learns how to do something that we ask it to do. And a couple of those things are like sorting photographs. Like how an algorithm in a computer through machine learning, they show them a bunch of pictures of cars. And now all of a sudden the computer, not all of a sudden, but over time, a computer learns how to recognize the front of a car, the side of a car, the back of a car, the top of a car. And now you can feed in like 1 million pictures and it can magically pick out all the pictures that have a car in the image, even if it's a tiny little piece of a car. You see that a lot of times when you go through and say, hey, prove that you're human, click the cars. You're actually helping to train AI to identify cars. So that's kind of cool. So neural networks, we're talking several networks of interconnected layers of machine learning. It's like a big monster getting bigger and bigger. Now you got more brains thinking this and crushing and compiling and just analyzing these huge amounts of data. and working with each other to really spread it out over a whole network. And they call these neural networks. And then there's a subset of that called deep learning. And this is where a bunch of neural networks are connected. I mean, you thought neural networks were bad. Look at deep learning. You've got all these neural networks connected to many layers, each doing a little something different and really collaborating on solving these problems. Now, deep learning is how we ended up with speech recognition and computer vision, being able to see, like computers being able to see so they can self-drive cars and trucks, which is rolling out right now. There's a couple of methods used in deep learning. Supervised learning. They call this labeled learning. So basically, we tell the computer, we have this data, we know what it is, we're going to feed that into you, and I want you to come up with predictions or analysis based on what I told you I'm looking for. So it might be thousands of photos, like the car example. We fed it in, we said, this is what a car looks like. We're training a computer, this is what a car looks like, so I want you to pick out all the pictures of cars. You can do that with animals. You can even do it with face recognition. So this is known as classification. Without getting too crazy, there's regression problems too in supervised learning. It's all labeled data. They were feeding information into a series of connected neural networks, and we're saying, all right, let's figure out what the rent in San Francisco is going to be in 6 months from now based on all these factors that we know change all the time, like the economy and the price of real estate and taxes and all this other crazy stuff. So that's one of the things they use it for. So supervised learning is basically where we have reference points in all the data with which we use to train the algorithm. So we're essentially training it based on what we already know, and then the computer spits out something that's, I guess, a little more intelligent and maybe surprising at times. So that's supervised learning. So you might see that if a company has a bunch of data, and they want to know, like a company that sells yo-yos, for example. Maybe they have some information and say, you know what, I think girls under the age of 11, their favorite color is pink. So we'll be able to sell more yo-yos to girls under the age of 11. Then they do some studies of people who are actually buying yo-yos with this tremendous amount of data. And they say, oh, wait a minute. Maybe girls under the age of 9 are really digging the pink yo-yos. And maybe when they hit 9 or 10 years old, they want purple. So let's change and revise that data based on what we're learning through machine learning. Basically, these are all labeled examples again. So we know pink, we know age, we have colors. So we have some information to go on. So that is supervised learning. Now, unsupervised learning, this is a little less accurate, but it's still a method of deep learning and it's still very important. Now, these algorithms they still go through tremendous amounts of data, really. I mean, depending on what that is. And they dump all this data in here, but instead of going through and looking at the labeled examples, they're now trying to go through this mess of data. It can even be the same data that we put in the supervised learning examples, but now we want to try to take and make inferences. We want to learn from patterns that we find, that the machines find in this data. And then they kind of learn things based on that, based on similarity. So there's a couple of ways we do this. It's something called clustering, which looks for things that are similar, and then we group all those things together. Like, we'll show you an example of separating birds by feather, color, size, beak shape, those kind of things. We can look for anomalies, which is really helpful in credit card security. So say you're eating dinner somewhere in like New Jersey, the worst place in the world to eat dinner. And I'm just kidding, I used to live in Jersey. What exit? And then somebody charges your card for something at a restaurant in India. Well, the computer's going to realize, well, you can't really be in New Jersey and India at the same time, okay? Maybe like an 18-hour flight or something, but nah. And then it flags the charge, shuts down the credit card, so there's no additional fraud. So that's kind of an example of an anomaly that unsupervised learning might be able to pick up. And association. This is kind of where you see recommendations when you shop for something online, and then it throws, if you just bought like a bunch of stuff for, say you like football, and maybe it's going to throw some protective equipment, or saying, hey, well, if he likes football, maybe he likes soccer too. Maybe he likes different things in different sports, and then they'll throw up some suggested products that you might buy. So kind of an example of where unsupervised learning is headed. So this example here, we see some penguins, right? And we're throwing all this stuff in the computer. See this bunch of pictures like this, similar to this. Again, this is oversimplified. I wouldn't do this. So the computer's going to look at the shape. It's going to notice, hey, there's this black thing on this penguin's face. So that's an interesting shape. I'm going to categorize that. And then I'm going to note that, wow, a lot of these things are the same color. So let me put those all in a category too. I'm going to combine all those. And then I'll look at the shape of the entire, whatever this thing is, all at once. And I'm going to categorize that too. Okay, they're all they're all like the same shape. And then we'll look at the size and say, you know what? These are relatively the same size too. So there must be something connecting all these things together. So I'm going to come up with this big report and tell the person who programmed me, all right, this is what I found. And then you look for the anomalies, the outliers. This other thing, this other bird here, it looks a little different, still has a black beak, about the same size, but the colors are different, the facial structure is different, and there's just something off about this. So I'm going to let my programmers know that there's an anomaly here, there's a problem, and I'm going to let them know that I found these things too. So that's kind of an example, again, a grossly, really simplified version of unsupervised learning. One more type of machine learning is something called reinforcement learning, and this is kind of like training a huge dog or any dog. So really, a computer uses trial and error to find the best way to do something, the most efficient way, the most effective way based on a set of rules that we supply to the algorithm. So it relies on learnings from past feedback from you, a coder. Say, oh, don't do that again. That was bad. So the computer puts that into its algorithm and says, all right, don't try that again because my coder didn't like it. And then it's set off to actually autonomously or automatically or kind of explore different ways to solve the problem on its own, things that we as humans may not have thought of. So it's kind of helpful in training robots in these big distribution centers. So the robot, we tell it, all right, I want you to pick up this big box of bricks, but I want you to go this way. Go 10 feet up, make a left in this column, go up here, and then go back. Well, the computer is going to go through. It's going to know that is the best way that we know so far. And the computer is going to say, well, what if we go this way and take a shortcut? This is a more efficient way. It uses less power. It's faster. It's more efficient. I don't run into other robots this way. So kind of an example, an oversimplified example of reinforcement learning. So another example is like a self-driving car. Now this would never happen, but as a good example, the car learns where it should drive to avoid damage and the fastest way to get from point A to point B. So you can see these blue lines. Maybe it drives off the side of the road, and that's not good because the car's destroyed. Maybe it crosses over into the opposing lane. Well, that's not good because I can crash into another car and it's over. I'm not going to get to point B. I'm not going to get anywhere because my car's broken. And then eventually it finds the best way to do it is that orange line, and it just follows that along because it's the lowest cost trajectory, it's the most efficient path, and it avoids all damage. So kind of an example of reinforcement learning. All right, so hungry for data. Every AI system, every machine learning algorithm needs large amounts of data. And they can include obvious things like if you're a boy or a girl or your age. And why is that? Because the more data it has, like statistics, the more samples it has, the more accurate its findings are going to be, the more confidence we'll have in its findings. So there's these companies called data mining companies. They try to add education, income, credit history, and even your grades to your school profile. Why? Because they try to marry that information with things they already know, and it creates an even better picture, an even clearer picture of what you are. So think of yourself as this blurry face in a sea of people. And the more data you throw into that algorithm and that they marry together, your face becomes clearer and clearer until eventually you can kind of make out, this is who you are. I see your face and I know who you are based on all the information that's been fed into me. So even deeper, this is where it gets a little weird. The data miners want to see your medical history, maybe driving records, your credit history, and, political preferences, who you're going to vote for, and even more things that you wouldn't believe. So why do we need all this data? Well, as we said, the more information they have, the better a company can get, or an organization, or the government can get, depending where you live, it can get on guessing how you're going to behave before you behave that way. Yeah, it's weird. Like, how can we do that? We're unpredictable. We're humans, right? We're random. Well, apparently we're not as random as we thought. The more information somebody has on us, the better they'll be able to guess what we're going to do before we do it. Like what we're going to buy, the colors, shapes, sizes, price we'll go for, how we're going to vote, who we're going to vote for, and basically everything else as well. And that's where another reason AI could get a little weird through all this data mining. So data collection today, where is it done? Is it already happening? Yeah. Every time somebody logs on Facebook and likes something, or joins a group, or comments on something, or clicks on an ad, or even in your messages, all that information is stored somewhere. And they're building a huge profile on everybody who uses Facebook right now. Hopefully not for malicious purposes, but just be aware that when you use social media, they are collecting data on you, and they already know a bunch about you if you're an active social media user. Google also collects information from our searches and our emails. Amazon through Alexa supposedly does not, I'm waiting for it to go off over there. Yeah, we have one too. Supposedly collects a lot of information and learns from that. It's kind of reinforced learning. So when you tell it to do something and it doesn't do it and you're not happy with it, if you report it on your app, it can try to fix itself and make it better and recognize your speech. And it's kind of weird. They actually are coming out with a fitness tracker. I think it's already released that from this. This is really weird. It listens to your voice. And from the sound of your voice, it can tell if you're angry or even if you're sick. So if you're raising your voice at something, it's going to try to analyze what happened. What just happened to this person that made them angry? Because they don't want to repeat that because they don't want you to get angry, especially at them, because that's bad for business. Or if you're sick, it'll be able to tell you're sick and how many times a year you get sick. And that's where it gets a little weird, right? Because somebody's collecting that data. All right, Bob Jones is sick 10 times a year. Maybe we should raise his insurance premium. Yeah, he's not eating right, or he's hanging out with the wrong people, or whatever. We don't know how that information is going to be used, and that's the wild card here. And also Apple and every other big company collects Twitter. Everybody collects information. They're all doing it. Instagram, TikTok especially is collecting a tremendous amount of information. And even health companies, credit cards, and when you go shopping, and it says, put your phone number in here so we can personalize your experience. They're building a profile on you, trying to guess your future behavior. Is it bad to do that? Not always. We'll talk about why. There's some benefits to this AI thing for sure, right? It can help you find maybe music or movies or books that you never would have heard of, but it can kind of analyze what you've liked in the past, how many times you've watched a movie, and say, all right, if he watched this movie 5 times, then he'll probably like this one. Or if she listens to this song, maybe she'll like this artist too. So a benefit is it can help you discover things that you may not have ever heard of in your normal life. Maybe your friends don't know about it. Maybe your circle doesn't know about it. Maybe your social media has never mentioned it. But this AI can put that whole picture together and recommend things that you'll probably like. So that's kind of cool. We've already realized the AI can correct spelling, and this is cool, grammar mistakes. It can kind of predict where something's used wrong, even if it's spelled correctly, and it looks like it might be used correctly. It can kind of, let me check this and make sure that this human is using this word or this phrase or this sentence or this punctuation the way that they intend to. So that's pretty cool. It can set your air conditioning automatically. If you have one of those cool Nest systems, when you walk in, it kind of knows your air, and it kind of adjusts the climate based on what it thinks you like, right? It can do a lot of things in your car, like adjust your seat or a whole bunch of really cool things in your home based on reinforcement learning. AI can help recognize and reduce fraud and identity theft through unsupervised learning. That's pretty helpful, right? Why? Because that keeps prices down. And now you don't have to go fight the credit card company and say, hey, I was never in India at that restaurant. I was in New Jersey. So you don't have to go through that because they've already flagged it and taken care of it. And that, believe me, that's very convenient. AI can help predict bad weather. It'll say this storm is going to spin up and be really, really powerful in the next couple of days based on these factors that I've learned before. It might be able to assess impact from climate change or even develop some cures for some diseases once it gets really smart and we start marrying all that DNA information we have together and start understanding the human genome. So we might be able to fight a lot of diseases and problems and help us live better lives. So there's a lot of cool things. It can also help make products and services safer. So just tremendous amounts of number crunching. It's say, oh, if I change this one little bumper on this car, I could end up saving lives. Maybe I put a new crumple zone in a car or something. We didn't realize that as humans because we can't think of everything. And the AI would be able to kind of, it's going to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's not going to take a break. It's going to keep going. Or a human's going to work 8 hours and knock off. You're done, right? So it can make things safer and less expensive. And I think that's great too. And here's the weird part. And really, there's two sides to this. People are thinking that there's something called I don't want to go into it, but basically we're not going to be able to differentiate whether something is a robot or an artificially intelligent being or program or algorithm or whatever, or a real person. So they're saying that AI could get so good, so believable, that an AI being, a robot or something, could end up being one of your best friends. There's something called a Turing test, and you can look that up too. It's basically being able to fool a human into thinking you're really talking to another human for a period of time. And we're going to get there. We're probably pretty close. I think a couple of things have already passed that test, but by 2040, it may be difficult to tell whether you're talking to a robot on a telephone or a text message or a real person, and maybe even in person too. So that's where things get a little tricky. And some people consider that a benefit. Some people consider it a threat for various reasons. But so let's look at some of the threats. So information can be sold to advertisers. Yeah, all that information, these data mining companies, that's what they do. They put these big profiles of people together and then they sell it to make a lot of money. So then other companies can use your profile and predict what you're going to click on and what you're going to buy. But this can also be used against you. Maybe this profile will say, all right, this person watches too many karate movies, and we have experience with people who watch a lot of karate movies and have tattoos. They drive more recklessly, and we should charge them more for car insurance. Even though if you watch karate movies and you have tattoos, you're probably the safest driver on the road. But based on what this AI comes up with on experiences of other people who have nothing to do with you, they could affect you in a negative way. So that is a potential threat. Some companies analyze face movements during job interviews. So say a person's interviewing you for a job, and they say, all right, well, how do you feel about working overtime? And you happen to make a little face like you can barely see it. Well, a computer's going to pick up on that mouth movement, and it's going to analyze that and generate a report. And it's going to say, of all the other people we hired who made that mouth movement, half of them quit within a month. So we don't want to hire that person because they made that mouth movement. That's kind of freaky, right? When you think about it. So they can really guess if you're going to be a good hire or not. Is it accurate? Not for everybody. I mean, there's always an outlier, and you could end up not hiring the best person for the job because they just kind of made a mouth movement for a random reason, right? And some governments are actually doing this now. Somebody told me a story about this. This is happening right now in another country. When you walk across the street and there's a red light, that's called jaywalking. And this country has cameras set up on its intersections, and it looks for people who are crossing the street during that red light. Takes a picture of them, throws it into an AI database, identifies their face based on a database, and sends them a ticket to their phone immediately. Before you're even done crossing the street, boop, you just got a $40 ticket for walking across the street while the red light was on. But that's not where it ends. They actually take your picture and they post it on a billboard. And they say, John crossed the street in a red light. Don't be like John. On a billboard in the middle of a busy city with millions of people. So now they embarrass you for jaywalking. This is happening right now. And this all happens before John even finished crossing the street. It's that fast. And it is freaky. So is this a threat or a bonus? I mean, it'll stop people from jaywalking and maybe they won't get hit by cars. Or is it really invading your privacy? Do you have the right to walk across the street in a red light and hope you don't get caught? That's a whole different argument. So the future with AI. So people ask, well, what's it going to look like? Well, robotics and automation have already increased productivity to historic levels. What does that mean? It means basically we make things faster and cheaper. So you can get that 85-inch TV that you've always wanted for a price you can afford now. It's not going to cost you $100,000. It costs you like $3-4 now. So that's a huge advantage. And we're keeping prices lower at a lot of stores by, unfortunately, replacing cashiers with automated self-checkouts. So a lot of things are happening already based on developments with AI and automation. And they're saying in the near future, a lot of industry experts are saying, analysts are saying that the next thing to go is probably going to be truck drivers within a couple of years. They're already testing self-driving trucks on the road in the Southwest. And from what reports are saying, they're pretty safe. They're doing really well. But these are wide open swaths of highways. They're not busy cities yet. That's the next phase of this thing. And that's really where the challenge is. They're saying that upwards of 5 million jobs could disappear within the next 10 to 20 years as truck drivers are replaced with self-driving trucks, which don't get sick. They don't go to sleep. They don't ask for raises. They don't need insurance. And, yeah, you can see how that's going. So these trucks can go out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Things are going to get places faster, cheaper, which is going to bring prices down for consumers. It's going to make a lot of people happy, but what's going to happen to all these truck drivers? They're going to have to find something else to do, right? And we know what they're going to do. And then followed by other things, like telemarketers. As AI gets better on the phone and you can't tell if it's a person or a robot, you know, a lot of those jobs are going to go away. Followed by soldiers, automated soldiers like RoboCops and Terminator type things. Those are closer than you think. They're already working on these things. They got a robotic dog they're selling. It's pretty darn amazing. And then farmers, right? Because you can automate a lot of things. I've seen a video of a machine that can actually pick strawberries without damaging it. These are already here. Really hard to do. Identify a strawberry, pick it without damaging it, store it, and get it to market. Already here. And even some doctors. There are robotic surgeons that are being trained by some of the best surgeons in the world. And they go in, they do it faster, they don't get tired, they don't make mistakes, they know exactly what to do. And even lawyers, a lot of law research lawyers jobs are going away because they can be replaced with automated, artificially intelligent robots or computers. A lot of things are going to change is the bottom line. And now this is going to have some other effects too, because wages are going to disappear. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. How are they going to make money, right? And living standards are going to decline as your income goes down. And this is going to cause a lot of disruption in society because lower tax revenues will actually erode the safety nets that are taking care of people right now. So it's kind of a weird chain reaction, and we're not sure how this is going to play out yet. So basically, we know artificial intelligence is here. It's coming, it's getting bigger, it's getting badder, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do to stop it. So for you, as a young person, this movement's going to require a lot of coders, and like a tremendous amount of coders to really usher this in. And there is a shortage of people in artificial intelligence right now, and there probably will be for the foreseeable future. So it's a great opportunity, and especially AI specialists. We're talking people who can teach computers how to entertain people. Because entertainment will actually be fed to the computers. We've been theorizing about this for years, that there will be an algorithm that will analyze movies that you like and actors that you like, and it will license their faces and beings and their voices and some of the storylines, and they'll be able to marry all that together. And you could just type in, I like this actor and I like space movies. And based on what you've done in the past, what you've watched, what you've liked, it can take your favorite actor, your favorite scenario, and create an entirely new movie based on what you like and what the computer will think you like. So yeah, that's heavy. So that means like thousands of producers and actors and editors and sound people and gaffers and grips and everybody who works in entertainment now could be replaced by one computer who could do all that stuff in 20 seconds or less. So yeah, it's going to replace a lot of jobs, but they're going to need coders to teach computers how to do this, how to really recognize these things. And it's going to take a while to do that. It's a long time to do this kind of thing. This change does take quite a while to do. And they're going to need psychologists and people who can teach AI how to be more like us, how to act like us, how to socially interact, how to be polite, how to be gracious, how to identify emotions and deal with that. So when these robots become your friend, it'll be able to tell when you're sad and say something to kind of perk you up and make you feel a little better, because that's kind of how companies sell more robots, you know what I mean? And people who can teach machines to learn faster than we do. They're not doing that right now. Right now, they're just throwing tons of data and they're just doing like small little leaps now, small little things that would be really painful or boring for people to do. And artificially intelligent machine learning robots and neural networks are doing all that hard work now. But eventually they're going to be able to master all that and do it a lot faster and a lot more efficiently. And eventually they're going to think faster than we do. So we'll have a problem, say, all right, we've got climate change. Computer, how do we deal with this? And it's going to shoot out some excellent answers of things we could do right now and tell us what will happen if we don't make those changes. So in a nutshell, AI might be one of the last human jobs left when you think about it. And this is, it's kind of a little strange to think about that. But yeah, I mean, as AI starts replacing other things that we used to do as humans, it's going to give us either a lot more free time or something else that we haven't figured out yet. We've got 15, 20 years to think about that, and that's your job. So a great opportunity to have a really good career right now is AI coding. So I'm telling every kid that I run across, man, this is what you want to get into. It's in its infancy now. It's just like a little kid. And by the time you get out of high school and college, it's going to be the big thing. And if you're already well positioned to get into it, you're going to do very well as a career. All right. If you have any questions, any comments, any other things that you can tell people about AI, maybe on your experiences or thoughts or theories of what you think is going to happen, put them in the comments below, and please like and subscribe too, because that helps us make more killer videos like this. Thank you. Darth and I say use the Force and be cool and always try to do the right thing. Chuck Frisch out.